Okay, down at the middle paragraph, it says, now we need more action, without which we find faith without works is dead. Let's look at steps 8 and 9. Who in here has taken steps 8 and 9 before? We have a list of all persons we had harmed and whom we are willing to make amends. We made it when we took inventory. So when I take inventory, yes, I have the list, but what I do is I use that inventory and go and make another list, put it on a piece of paper so it's concise. These are the people I owe amends to, and write out beside it the harm that I've caused, at least to some degree.
You ever had anybody, a couple of these are people I'm not willing to make amends to?
Do what?
You know, it says make a list of all persons we have harmed and to whom you're willing to make amends.
Yes.
And if he says I'm not.
I've had several people. One guy in particular I mean, we went through the whole thing and got to this part of the book, and he was not going to make amends to his mother. That was it, man. He was not going to do it. And so he goes and he makes these other amends, but this whole time that's eating his lunch. And got down to it, and I said, look, this is, here we are. Do you want to stay sober? Are you willing to go to any length or not? He said, well, I'm not going to make amends to her. And a year later, he got drunk. He had like 15 years. And he was active in Alcoholics Anonymous, and he ran this home for disabled people. He had people in his house and all that kind of stuff. He was being of service and doing all those things. So yeah, that's one instance for sure. But I have had other people who were unwilling, and we pray until the willingness comes. That's for sure. I have to, as it's going to tell us a little bit later, at some point, I have to take the bit in my teeth and say, hey, do I want to go to any length for a better relationship with God or not? And so yes, I have had that. We subjected ourselves to a drastic self-appraisal. Now we go out to our fellows and repair the damage done in the past. We attempt to sweep away the debris which has accumulated out of our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves. So those are guides to help me look for what to look for through while I go through this inventory. And once we have this 8-step list, we can get rid of that inventory. No need to leave it laying around, because it's used, it's served its purpose by then. If we haven't the will to do this, we ask until it comes. Remember, it is agreed in the beginning that we would go to any length for victory over alcohol. And that's a great question. I mean, even now, no matter how many years you've got, am I willing to go to any length for victory over alcohol? And what is it that stands in the way of my relationship with God that could get me drunk? Probably there are still some misgivings. As we look over the list of business acquaintance, friends we have hurt, we may feel diffident about going to some of them on a spiritual basis. Let us be reassured. To some people, we need not and probably should not emphasize the spiritual feature on our first approach. There's one thing that I've found to be really helpful, and that is when I get to this point, go through the chapter to the wives, to the family, and to the employer, and look for how I participated in those areas of my life. And I found that to be helpful before I start to make this list, so that I get an idea, because I had no idea that, I was living with a family, and shit, they were living there by themselves. I wasn't there. I wasn't present. And what an effect that had on them. Just for me to bring that up brought an avalanche of this is how that affected me. Because it is disconcerting to live with somebody who's there physically, but not emotionally and spiritually. It says we might prejudice them on page 77. If we go to them in a spiritual, professing our spirituality, that's not why we're there. We're not there to tell them, oh, well, I've got religion. But at the moment, we're trying to put our lives in order. But this is not an end in itself. Our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. How can I be of maximum service to God and the people about me if I have alcoholism? The best way I know is to treat it in myself and pay attention to my experience as I go through this process. It is seldom wise to approach an individual who still smarts from an injustice to him and announce we have gone religious. In the prize ring, we would be called leading with the chin. Why lay ourselves open to being branded fanatics or religious bores? We may kill a future opportunity to carry a beneficial message, but our man is sure to be impressed with a sincere desire to set right the wrong. He is going to be more interested in a demonstration of goodwill than our talk of spiritual discoveries, which this is somewhat difficult. If you've had a powerful spiritual experience, it's hard not to talk about that stuff. And I'll tell you just today I talked to a guy in the hospital, and we were talking, and he had went to his brother. He hadn't talked to his brother in a couple of years. They were estranged, and he was half lit, and the thought come to him, I need to call my brother. And so he calls his brother, and his brother says, well, I've been praying that we would reconcile our differences. And his brother was really religious and didn't cotton to his drinking. And this was like last week. And so he calls him up, and they had a 2-hour conversation. They said a prayer. And shortly after that, he had a powerful spiritual experience. I mean, and he described it. And this guy is exactly like the one. He even used some of the same words that I used to describe mine. He said, I really thought I was going to throw up and it would be gold. And I'm going, oh my God. That's exactly how I felt. Exactly. So making amends can be a powerful, powerful thing. And we say, well, these are the 9-step promises, and halfway through, I wasn't anywhere near that when I had a spiritual experience. Wasn't even close. Couldn't even hardly read. And certainly hadn't read this book. So, and we get into this process, and we get to thinking, well, I've got this objective, and I'm going to get to this place and have this, and which it does say, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, it does say that, but it doesn't say where. And so don't think that it's confined to one place, to amends or step one, or the steps. For me, is important for me to remember that this is where God does the heavy lifting, not me. I can get it as perfect as I want to get it. That's not gonna take me where I want to go. But this inner condition is what's important. We may kill a future opportunity if we go and be branded a religious bore or talk incessantly about spiritual things. Future opportunity to carry a beneficial message. But our man is sure to be impressed with a sincere desire to set right the wrong. He is going to be more interested in a demonstration of goodwill than in a talk of spiritual discoveries. Has anybody ever approached someone who didn't accept an amends?
Mm-hmm.
I have. They kicked me out. They said, we do not want to talk to you. And I owed them a lot of money too. If I would have been them, I'd have wanted to talk to me. Why don't you, we don't use this as an excuse for shying away from the subject of God when it will serve any good purpose. We are willing to announce our convictions with tact and common sense. The question of how to approach the man we hated will arise. It may be he has done us more harm than we have done him. And though we may have acquired a better attitude toward him, we're still not too keen about admitting our faults. You ever go on an amends and just be absolutely certain that they're going to use this against me as a sign of weakness? That's one of the things that comes up in me, and they're going to, you know, they're going to use this. And I've not had that happen yet, not to my knowledge. So, because that's kind of the culture I grew up in. If you were weak, you got overtook. That's just all there was to it. Let me find my place. Nevertheless, with a person we dislike, we take the bit in our teeth. It is harder to go to an enemy than to a friend, but we find it much more beneficial to us. We go to him in a helpful and forgiving spirit. That tells me how I'm supposed to go to him. Confessing our former ill feelings and expressing our regret. Under no condition do we criticize such a person or argue. So we don't go say, well, I'm sorry I did this and this and this, and then, but it was your fault that I did all that. You know, it's not the way to go about that. Simply, we tell him that we will never get over drinking until we have done our utmost to straighten out the past. Who in here believes that that's true? That's a true statement. I've got to do something about these things, you know. And when I make my list, nobody ever Carl, for certain, he would never go through that list and critique it. Well, you don't need to make that one, and you don't need to make that one, or you need to make that one. He would help me to make my amends. And whatever it is I needed to do with that, whether it was write a letter or pray for that person or approach the person or whatever, or the people around that person, or go to the graveside, whatever it was I needed to do it because it was on my list. It had nothing to do with keeping score. And you know, I've seen people really try to get into that. Oh, we're keeping score here, you know. It's got nothing to do with that. If it's bothering me, it's on my list. And, you know, you get to decide. It's your inventory. And now they would almost all good sponsors would help me with my list as I'm sharing it in the fifth step. I mean, they're there. Oh, yeah, let's write that down and let's put that down and put the names down. But they don't critique that list. If I think it needs to go on there, then I'm to pray about that. I'm the one that needs to do that. And then when I lay out what it is that I've done, the harm I've caused to a sponsor, then they can tell me how to proceed. They can tell me from their own experience. But it don't go through marking people off the list. You know, I need to do something about that. And it just depends on what it is. Something about it. Yeah, I mean, I've seen it over and over. People, and it's not just this, with the program in general, would hang on to some shit knowingly, knowingly, not not put that down on purpose, and it's just it's a recipe for disaster for sure. And here again, we can go back to the last half of Bill's story and look at what he did, and this is part of it. This is part of it, and Dr. Bob too. You know, um, and this, there's another thing that kind of struck me. Bill and his story, he didn't. It didn't take him 6 months. He got up, he went around to the places, and he made his amends. And he straightened out the past. He got current with these people. Now that having people paid off and being current is two different things. There were people on my list who I had made decisions that that the other people didn't like. Just because they don't like my decision that I made, that was a sound decision, doesn't mean I harmed that person. So there were people we weren't on good terms. There was something in our relationship between us, but that doesn't mean that I harmed that person. I took my business in this direction. I quit selling to this company, which hurt the guy's feelings, and he got really upset about it. And I started selling over here because he's paying me more money. And so he got really hurt about it. That doesn't mean I need to go over there and say, well, hey, I owe you an amends. It's just a decision. If I make a decision and your feelings get hurt, if it's a sound decision. Now, if I tell you I'm going to do one thing and I go do another, then that's something different. But if I'm just making decisions, the way I'm led to do it, and you get your feelings hurt, that doesn't mean that I need to go make an amends for that. You might want to do a little work yourself. Does that make sense?
So you're getting some of these people that from the fourth step in the story, and if there was actually organizations such as, let's say, military, some other, not including IRS, you pay them back. But with the military, it makes it a little bit difficult. Some radical youth Jesus movements where some people
So it doesn't say that I have to go make everyone. It says I got to do my utmost to do that. So if I try to find that person and I stand willing and ready to make that amends, then I've done my part. It's not like I have to do the impossible thing. All too often, this guy that I beat the living shit out of one time, and I couldn't find him, and he showed up at the appropriate time. And I just knew we were going to go at it again, but that ain't what happened. I got to make my amends to him. For some time he had his jaw wired shut, and I mean, it really, affected him, and his buddy, you know, had the retina knocked off his eye, and I mean it was a really a hard fight. And but you know, I didn't know how to find the guy, and this was before internet, and I'm on the King Ranch down there. I wasn't even in that area, and he had moved to Africa and was doing hunts down there in Africa. And I'm coming through and I'm making my amends in Stephenville, and I'm sitting in the cafe and talking to some people from Alcoholics Anonymous, and then he walks in, looks right at me. I'm going, I've been looking for you. And so I got to make amends for that, you know. So we have our list, and we stand ready to do what we need to do to make those amends. That doesn't mean I have to do the supernatural.
And sometimes the supernatural does us.
That's right.
Because I was driving through Tulsa and I didn't have this person on my list, and I clearly heard, what about that? And man, I thought, it's been 15 years. How in that? All right, I'll try one number. Within 15 minutes, I had the phone number for that lady, and she answered the phone. You know, it's just like, you can't make that stuff up. And I didn't even remember. It wasn't even a piece of business. And since that time, I've sent her an appropriate amount of money plus interest. And she knows something about Alcoholics Anonymous today. Right? She knows that that's why I called. She knows that I'm sober. We're still Facebook connected.
And what you said was kind of like what I was gonna say, because I have people on my amends list that wasn't on my. Even, they weren't people I was mad at. You know?
That's what.
Yeah, I think it does say that we, even though there was no resentment connection with them.
Sexually. Odd.
Yeah,
You can't.
you're not going to go barging into people's lives. If they're on my list, I need to do, it's like he said.
Not transmitting.
If it made my 4-step, I find I'm at fault.
Not.
Huh?
Not sexually
Yes.
molested children.
I was there. And I tell you what, I played a big part in that. Not what happened to me, but I carried that shit in all of my relationships, all my life.
Me too.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
and
just
everybody
drag it around, and I don't even know what's wrong with me. I don't understand, you know, understand. Till you get it on the 4-step with somebody who knows how to read it and saying, look at this, look at this. When you get to your 4th column, you want to get free, then let's look at it realistically. Drag that into your job, drag that into your relationships, drag that into your family, drag that into your relationships with your parents, your grandparents. That has an effect, because I come from this place. Things too, not in the act. Yeah, they ought to be whipped for doing that. If I would have just said, shit, it's not just sexual molestation. That's a lot of different things. You hurt me, and shit, I could walk down the see somebody in the streets of Steenville or Mingus, and I can tell you exactly what they done to me, dragging that around, you know. Not do, you know, be guarded in business and not be, you know, be really selfish and self-centered where business was concerned. It was all about me, all about me.
Hey,
You know.
revisit that statement that you said what they did was small in comparison to
To
what
what I did
or
based on what they did.
based on what they did or about what they did.
Yeah.
But they,
Prejudices based on.
Affect your whole life if you walk around dragging that sack of stones. It just will. And that's just any sack of stones. You cheated me or you cheated on me. So the point is to get this on paper. We make our list, and the only adjustments might be where the harm was and what I'm going to do about it. It's not like, well, I'm going to mark that off because it came to me. It came to me in inventory. I need to do something about that. And sometimes that's facing the people. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes I can't do that without harming a lot of people. And we're fixing to read about that. You gotta, you can't just barge headlong into people and make your amends to save your own ass. You gotta be considerate. I think it says considerate. Sorry, let's see. We go to him in helpfulness and forgiving spirit, confessing our former ill feelings and expressing our regret. You know, that's one thing you can do, even if you can't put your finger on exactly what it is. With some people, you can go to them, not all, but with some people, you can go to them and express your, you know, that you had ill feelings towards them, even though I couldn't really put my finger on it. Some of them, I just didn't like their style, really. Usually I'd be in a fight with you if I didn't like your style, but not always. Under no condition do we criticize such a person or argue. Simply tell him that we'd never get over drinking until we had done our utmost to straighten out the past. Very important statement. Until I've done my utmost to straighten out the past. We're there to sweep off our side of the street, realizing that nothing worthwhile can be accomplished until we do so, never trying to tell them what they should do. His faults are not discussed. We stick to our own. If our manner is calm, frank, and open, we will be gratified with the result. What about the people who have passed away? Graveside amends. I write a letter. What I was taught to do is write a letter and go to the graveside and make amends. It's not like, here's one thing that helped me to see is no matter where you're at, no matter who you are, what you did or what I did to you, just because they left or just because they've left this world does not mean that that relationship is not going on. Every time they come to mind, that relationship lives inside of me, not between me and you. That way I have complete and total access to my part in that relationship. I was always trying to fix that thing between us, you know, I'll straighten up and you straighten up. That's not the case. They could be not even in this world. And if I think, well, you know, they've died, you know, that relationship's dead. No, every time I think about carrying my granddad to the grave with black eyes and bloody and beat to hell, every time I think about that relationship with him, I can hear him now. His byword was God Almighty. God Almighty. I can hear him tell me that now, you know, going, ugh, you know, you've looked better, Mark. I mean, I'd just been out to have a drink in Granddad's honor. He was an alcoholic, periodic. The pallbearers, my cousins, we went out to have a drink in his honor, and they had a drink and they went home. I met my first ex-wife, got in a fight, had a wreck, and was so drunk that I couldn't get up. They had to come and get me. My cousins come and got me and dressed me the next day. Going, you know, look, you know, you got to be there. You can't not go there. And everybody would have been happier if I wouldn't have. So, you know, there are things I can do, and, you know, pray about it. You don't have to just be stuck with this and say, well, I don't know what to do. Well, of course you don't, or you would have done it different. You would have done something. Pray about that. Lean on this power you've gained access to. Show me what to do. Make that a part of your morning prayer when you're in this. God, show me, take me to my next amends and show me what to do. Show me how to do it.
But isn't that the new name of the game? That's a step 3 decision right there. Just going, I'm not going to be in charge. You're going to tell me.
Yeah. You know, when I get the list, I do want to pick some people that are you know, at the top of the list or first on my list, and it's not always the worst ones or the best ones. But I want to pray about that too. Help me select 3 people, and I want to pick these 3. If I'm going to start out on a path, you know, I've got to hear the knock on the door if I'm going to go do it. Says in 9 cases out of 10, the unexpected happens. One of the most unexpected things when they learned that I was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous is they had people that they wanted me to talk to, several of them. Because they knew what a hellion I was. Sometimes the man we are calling upon admits his own faults, so feuds of years standing melt away in an hour. Rarely do we fail to make satisfactory progress. Our former enemies sometimes praise what we're doing and wish us well. Occasionally, they will offer assistance. It should not matter, however, if someone throws us out of his office. We have made our demonstration, done our part. It's water over the dam. Most alcoholics owe money. No way. Sure. No, for one thing, they had already charged it off with IRS was one thing. Now there are some cases where, you know, if you go to someone and they say, no, I don't want the money, you know, then maybe donate it to some kind of a whatever. No, they threw my ass out. They didn't want to see nothing to do with me. And really, it was that was a damn blessing for me. I mean, um, Oh, we do not dodge our creditors, telling them what we're trying to do. We make no bones about our drinking. They usually know it anyway, whether we think so or not. Nor are we afraid of, of disclosing our alcoholism on the theory it may cause us financial harm. So here's where we get to break our own anonymity, is in the ninth step. We need to go to these people who were a part of my community. I mean, they were my peers, you know, they're people I did business with. Approached in this way, the most ruthless creditor will sometimes surprise us. Arrange the best deal we can and let these people know we're sorry. Our drinking has made us slow to pay. We must lose our fear of creditors no matter how far we have to go, for we are liable to drink if we are afraid to face them. One other thing is that was a feed company that I was kicked out of, and I did buy feed from them afterwards. They were okay with that. Anybody ever have any financial amends? You did?
I wanted some because that was overt.
Oh yeah, just
I can see-
pay it and get done
Yeah.
with it. Yeah.
I had one done.
That's one thing, when you know, and I do, I fill out these cards, you know, and, these 3x5 cards. And, once I've got this list, I know the harm, to some degree of what I've caused. I put their name at the top, and underneath I want to write what the harm is. And then once I get all those filled out, I want to separate them in two different piles. One, I want one pile where I'm willing to make, this pile the ones I'm not willing to make or I'm afraid to make. So I want two different piles. Put a plus on the ones I'm willing, put a minus on the ones I'm unwilling. And this has to do with that picking three, you know, that's going to come from the willing pile. Then I fill out a master card that describes how I'm going to make these amends, or the sort of the format that I want to go by. First, I want the name. I want a address or contact information if I can get it. Then I want to make an appointment with the person. I want to tell them why I'm there. It's not because I'm turned into a good person. It's because I may not overcome drinking if I don't make these amends. Tell them I'm a member of 12-step program or Alcoholics Anonymous. So I tell them that why I'm there. Don't make an appointment over a meal. Don't get locked into a place where you can't get out if you need to, where you're sitting there waiting on the waitress and shit gets sticky. You know? You don't want to have to stiff them for the bill, you know. So make an appointment, meet at a coffee shop or some place where or at the park or something like that. I usually try to avoid going to their house if I can, but I can't always do that. Go to their office, I can do that. So I want to make the appointment, tell them why I'm there, and then when I get in front of this person, I want to tell them, look, this is the harm that I've caused that I'm aware of. I don't want to just assume that I'm aware of all the harm and the ways I've hurt that person. And this is what I'm aware of. Do you need to tell me how that affected you? Is there anything else? And I shut up and listen to them. Sometimes that can be a long, drawn out thing about how it affected them. Because I don't know. They make decisions based on what I promised or whatever, and you know, it turns into a real shit show. So let them have that opportunity to have their say so. Is there other harm that I'm not aware of? And listen to it. And then what do I do to set the matter straight? What can I do to set this right? Like he was talking about. One of the most important things I do is don't agree to do something I can't do. One of my amends was to go to therapy with a lady. I did go. I did. I went until she said, I really don't need you there. So that was,
What'd you say to the therapist to get to that?
well, we talked a lot about Alcoholics Anonymous. Talked a lot about AA, and we talked about relationship and some of the things that I'd been taught and learned through Alcoholics Anonymous and relationship. And but anyway, I did what I was supposed to do. It kind of feels that way. You've got somebody that's sharing. It starts to feel like this person is sharing a fist down. So I don't agree to things I can't do. If I owe you some money and I'm going to make amends, I take it with you. Show up empty-handed. It may be a small amount. I've been laughed at. You've got to be kidding me. But no, I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding you. This is explain my situation. But, you know, I owed $250,000. I got some ranch down there. It's making $5 2 weeks. But I can tell you this, if I'm willing to show up and say, hey, my name is this, and I'm with somebody, that's way better. They come down. She asked me how much I could pay him. She said, Steve, she looked at me. all you got. So, $76 a month. Thing is to show up. I've found that to be really important. And I've got stories where, you know, people were driving through a town and their in-laws happened to be driving, called them and happened to be in the same place on the interstate, and they stopped and met and made that amends. And it's like, that's really weird, really weird. I-20, you know.
That man that said that he wouldn't, could see me to let me make an amends. Mark and I were driving down the highway in Kansas, and Greg Woolard, we're driving through a town, and Greg Woolard, the man who didn't want to see me, was right there in the next car, and we pulled off, and at least I got to say hello, and, you know, didn't try and steal his car. It was all real reputable.
Good. It's
Yeah.
really, it's really
That
helpful.
was a change of behavior.
Now here's perhaps we have committed a criminal offense which might land us in jail if it were known to the authorities. We may be short in our accounts and unable to make good. We have already admitted this in confidence to another person, but we are sure we would be imprisoned or lose our job if it were known. Maybe it's only a petty offense, such as padding the expense account. Most of us have done that sort of thing. Maybe we're divorced and have remarried, but haven't kept up the alimony to number one. She is indignant about it and has a warrant for our arrest. That's a common form of trouble too. Although these reparations may take innumerable forms, there are some general principles which we find guiding, reminding ourselves that we have decided to go to any length to find a spiritual experience. You notice before it's always said any length to overcome alcoholism. Now they're saying willing to go to any length for a spiritual experience. Are you willing to shoot for that? The guy that I talked to today, you know, he's going, well, you know, I just know that I'll never drink again. And I said, well, whether you do or you don't, nobody can ever take that experience away from you. It will be yours forever. And he says, I certainly understand that. I've got this sense of that. And that's been my experience. We ask that we be given the strength and direction to do the right thing, no matter what the personal consequences may be. We may lose our position or reputation or face jail, but we're willing, we have to be. We must not shrink at anything. Usually, however, other people are involved. Therefore, we are not to be the hasty, foolish martyr who wouldn't needlessly sacrifice others to save himself from the alcoholic pit. A man we know had remarried because of resentment and drinking. He had not paid alimony to his first wife. She was furious. She went to court and got an order for his arrest. He had commenced our way of life and had secured a position and was getting his head above water. It would have been impressive heroics for him to walk up to the judge and said, here I am. Let's see, there was something I was going to say there. Anyway, we thought he ought to be willing to do that if necessary, but if he were in jail, he could provide nothing for either family. We suggested he write His first wife admitting his faults and asking forgiveness. He did, and also sent a small amount of money. He told her what he would try to do in the future. He said he was perfectly willing to go to jail if she insisted. Of course, she did not, and the whole situation has long been adjusted. Before taking drastic action, which might implicate other people, we secure their consent. If we have obtained permission, have consulted with others, ask God to help, and the drastic step is indicated, we must not shrink. So all this stuff you hear in a meeting about statute of limitations, they don't seem to give a shit. They say, well, you know, it's not me going and making amends that's getting me locked up. It's the fact that I did the crime. That's the deal, you know. I mean, Carl was kind of a hard ass. Luckily, I didn't have those kind of things really that much. This brings to mind a story about one of our friends. While drinking, he accepted a sum of money for a bitterly hated business rivalry, giving him no receipt for it. He subsequently denied having received the money and used the incident as a basis for discrediting the man. He thus used his own wrongdoing as a means of destroying the reputation of another. In fact, his rival was ruined. He felt that he had done wrong and could not possibly make right. If he opened the old affair, he was afraid it would destroy his reputation of his partner, disgrace his family, and take away the means of livelihood. What right had he to involve those dependent upon him? How could he possibly make a public statement exonerating his rival? After consulting his wife and partner, he came to the conclusion that it was better to take those risks than to stand before his creator guilty of such ruinous slander. He saw that he had to place the outcome in God's hands, or he would soon start drinking again, and all would be lost anyhow. He attended church for the first time in many years. After the sermon, he quietly got up and made an explanation. His action met widespread approval, and today he is one of the most trusted citizens of his town. This has all happened years ago. Anybody got anything?
Just in that setting, that story, that's at a time where the community went to the same church, went to school, went to, like, if you talked about it at church, you likely talked about it at the tank.
Yeah.
And they, like, say, you get into Bible and slander even more.
Say, to make sure, see what you're saying. These are those people.
Well, the community was a lot smaller then.
Yeah.
You know, for sure. Like when my first amends were majority, almost all of them were in one county or two counties, you know. I just really,
First inventory that I did, and I went to my dad's grave and I wrote the letter. And I called Mark. I parked at the top of this cemetery, and I can remember walking down this hill, and I can tell you what it looked like in my mind. And I called him and told him he worked with me on it. And I just searched back and I saw that picture, and it looks exactly like and I know the date, March 21st, 2020. I was probably about 4 months sober, 5 months. That is so cool that we get to make memories like that with each other that last years and years.
All right, the chances are that we have domestic troubles. That means in this country. Oh, no, it means at home, yeah. Maybe there was a little bit. Perhaps we were mixed up with women in a fashion we wouldn't care to have advertised. We doubt if, in this respect, alcoholics are fundamentally much worse than other people. But drinking does complicate sex relations in the home. After a few years with an alcoholic, the wife gets worn out, resentful, and uncommunicative. Mine was over communicative. She was worn out, all right, but she was really communicating that. The husband begins to feel lonely, sorry for himself. He commences to look around in the nightclubs or the equivalent for something besides liquor. Perhaps he is having a secret and exciting affair with a girl who understands. In fairness, we must say that she may understand, but what are we going to do about a thing like that? A man so involved often feels very remorseful at times, especially if he is married to a loyal and courageous girl who has literally gone through hell with it for him. Then it says, whatever the situation, we usually have to do something about it. That's a pretty good guiding. Got to do something about this, you know. And I got a big, long, drawn out story behind that from my own experience with cheating. If we were sure our wife doesn't know, should we tell her? Not always. We think if she knows in a general way that we have been wild, should we tell her the details? Undoubtedly, we should admit our fault. She may insist on knowing all the particulars. She will want to know who the woman is and where she is. We feel we ought to say to her that we have no right to involve another person. We are sorry for what we have done. God willing, it shall not be repeated. More than that, we cannot do. We have no right to go further, though there may be justifiable exceptions, and though we wish to lay down no rule of any sort, we have often found this to be the best course to take. In my own experience, when I went to make amends to my first wife, who I had, cheated on, and she and I was told, I said, do not tell her about that. You caused her enough harm. She didn't know. It's just leave it alone. Don't do it. So I'm making an amends to her. And I asked her, what can I do to set this right? And she said, did you ever cheat on me? And I'm going, shit. And so I had to tell her, yeah, I did, and she starts to crying and sobbing, and I'm going, I'm so sorry. And and started trying to console her. And she said, you don't understand. She said, I thought I was crazy. And the people around me told me I was crazy, that you wouldn't do that. And I felt
She
about
knew.
this big.
She knew, didn't
She knew. She knew. And I think that's kind of the truth for especially women. They seem to know. They may not know what, but they know. And
she?
I'll tell you, I learned my lesson, because that was a horrific thing. I mean, I could not forgive myself for doing that. It was almost like at the moment that this happened, something left my body that I would never get back. And I just couldn't believe it. I just couldn't believe it, because I had friends that were, they're crowding around, didn't seem to bother them none. and it just ate me completely up. And I mean, it really did. It tore me up. It was like I could never, ever, ever take that back. Like that's it forever. And that was profound for me. It was really harmful to her, but it was really harmful to me too. I did some really screwed up shit behind that, you know. So anyway, my experience, maybe too much information.
Really.
Yeah. And I'll never forget it. It was such a profound, because I really loved this lady, man. I loved her and I loved her kids. And I mean, I really did. I was alcoholic and I just could not. There you have it. Whatever the situation, we usually have to do something about it. If we're sure our wife does not know, should we tell her? Not always. We think if she knows in a general way we've been wild, should we tell her the details? Undoubtedly, we should admit our faults. She may insist on knowing the particulars. She will want to know the woman's name and where she is. We feel we ought to say to her that we have no right to involve another person. Now, I did have the good sense to do that. We're sorry for what we have done. God willing, it shall not be repeated. More than that, we cannot do. We have no right to go further. Though there may be justifiable exceptions, and though we may wish to lay down no rule, we have often found this to be the best course to take. Our design for living is not a one-way street. It is good for the wife as for the husband. For if we can forget, so can she. It is better, however, that one does not endlessly name a person upon whom she can vent jealousy. Perhaps there are some cases where the utmost frankness is demanded. No outsider can appraise such an intimate situation. And remember that. Remember that when you're working with somebody, it's not my job to appraise their situation. It's not my job to tell them what to do. Unless they specifically ask me, I don't tell them. As far as breaking up or staying together or whatever. And these situations, these relationships are intimate. And if you take sides, you're fixing to get thrown under the bus. That's what's going to happen.
Don't get between the bull and the heifer.
That's right. That's probably what's going to happen is you're going to get thrown under the bus because, it's just, that's the way it is. Now, if they're in harm's way, then yeah. Say, hey, you got to get out of there. Got to get out of harm's way. It doesn't mean you have to leave them forever, but you definitely have to get out of harm's way. So kind of keep that in mind. It may be that both will decide that the way of good sense and loving kindness is to let bygones be bygones. Each might pray about it, having the one's happiness uppermost in mind. Keep it always in sight that we are dealing with that most terrible human emotion, jealousy. Good. Good generalship may decide that the problem to be attacked on the flank rather than risk a face-to-face combat. So if you're, when you've got your sex inventory, don't just go down the list starting to make amends to all these gals or, guys. They kind of moved on with their life. They may have somebody else in their life that don't know shit about you. So keep that in mind. If we have no such complications, there's plenty we should do at home. Sometimes we hear an alcoholic say that the only thing he needs to do is keep sober. Certainly, he must keep sober, for there will be no home if he doesn't. but he is yet a long way from making good to the wife or parents whom for years he has so shockingly treated. That's another thing to look at when you're making these amends or making this list. Look around the relationship and see if there are others that were affected, that were harmed. Kids, in-laws, outlaws, mom, dad. Passing all understanding is the patience mothers and wives have had with alcoholics. Had this not been so, many of us would have no homes today, would perhaps be dead. The alcoholic is like a tornado roaring through the lives of others. Hearts are broken, sweet relationships are dead, affections have been uprooted, selfish and inconsiderate habits have kept the home in turmoil. This is like, what about today? Am I doing this today? Some mornings I wake up in a household that everybody in it's mad. And I just woke up. They were fine when we went to bed. And I just woke up. But I gotta be considerate of other people. That there are other people who live there. They have a right to their feelings. They have a right to how they are. They don't have a right to throw it on me, and I don't have a right to make them carry my emotions either. However, we feel that a man is unthinking to say that sobriety is enough. Is sobriety enough? Or do you have to grow spiritually? And is that going to be a pain in the ass? Somewhat.
Is that Fred or Jim?
Jim.
Jim.
Big Jim.
Or,
The whiskey milk man.
yeah.
So what is that going to involve? Enlarging my spiritual life. Does that mean I'm going to be sitting out there on the ranch praying and meditating? Is that going to enlarge my spiritual life?
No, but you know how you said if you don't want to do something, but you need to do it, ask for the power to do it, because it's not in you.
Yeah.
It's in you, but it's not from you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if I could just will myself and I wouldn't have any struggles at all, but I can't.
Generally speaking, the more people in my life, the bigger my spiritual life is. Generally speaking. And that's even including the people I don't like. They enlarge my spiritual life too. They're an important part of me looking at myself. Because don't forget that relationship, no matter how old or how new, where they are, is alive and well in me. Say, could you talk to me about how you feel? What? Well, why would you do that? So a lot of these people I really didn't know. I didn't know that. Yeah, I thought I knew. I had them pegged, and pretty soon they didn't even have an identity. They were just that person that did that. They didn't even have a life other than what they did to me. Their whole purpose was to screw me over. Now, if you would have asked me, I would have told you, oh, no, 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 no. I've life, but that's not what was actually going on. Like he was saying, sitting down there drinking whiskey and hating them. There's a lot to be learned about relationships and how you see other people. And there's just a lot to be learned from making amends and looking at these relationships. And Carl used to say that there isn't anything but relationships. And it's not that alcoholics don't know how to do relationships. They know how to do them real well. They just don't know how to participate in them. And this is a matter of participating. It's not a matter of running it or guiding it or making it go the way I want or making it last or staying together or any of that. It's how do I participate? Because if it's not that, it has to do with performance. So I do it all right. I do, I get everything right. That's not going to take me where I want to go in any relationship. Doing it right.
Yeah, trying to be perfect is not gonna.
Because that's subjective.
It's not only subjective, eventually I won't be able to live up to my own idea.
And then what do you have?
I'm going to blame you. Most of the time. But those are, this is there are.
So you get to the real authentic you, and so that you can be present for the real authentic.
We're about to get there.
I like it.
Because it's going to ask me that every day is a day I must carry this vision into my activity. So it's really important that I have one. How do I intend to participate? And it's not am I going to run my relationships? How am I going to participate in it? And that's hard. That's really hard. That means that I've got to take a position below the whole. The relationship. If I'm going to participate in this group, I've got to take a position below this group. Does that make sense? Shut up, Roger.
So you mean from an attitude of service?
From an attitude of, I want to participate. I don't want to run it.
Like you saying, I can't possibly get mine unless my focus is on seeing that somebody else gets theirs.
Trying to see that they get theirs. Yes. And also there's this thing about how we see this group. How do we see this group? There's my point of view. I have a point of view. Don't ever think that you don't have an agenda when you come to any kind of relationship, whether it's your relationship with money, yourself, with other people, your home. You will have an agenda. You will have an agenda. Oh, and they ask, what's your agenda? Like it's some kind of bad thing. That's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing.
Because sometimes, what do you mean?
If I can admit it, that I have this bias. I have this bias because I have an agenda.
Is that why you try and carry a vision so you know who you're trying to show up and be?
Yes, it's not made up by me. It's my vision of God's will for me. It's my vision, not of God's will, not my vision of Mark's will for me. So I need to and use this inventory. You can use the inventory to see where you failed, especially in what we should have done instead. And in resentment, if you look above the relationship, this takes a lot of time. And I was really lucky early on, first, several years. Well, I didn't have nothing but time. I could do that. I could go to each one and study on it and sit with it and pray and meditate about that. And please show me where, where trust is in these relationships and how that plays a part, and how these different principles play a part in these relationships. But you can get an idea of how you participate in it. And when we go to this vision of God's will, it's not based on my success. It's based on my failures. I'm coming from a place of powerlessness always in this program. Always. I'm not going to build relationships based on success. My relationships that I have that I really value today are built on powerlessness.
Want to show within every relationship with the spiritual principles that go with the step?
Yes, but we're gonna get specific with that. We're gonna get, and you know, we have a sane and sound idea. If we've taken a sex inventory and we have a sane and sound idea about how we want to participate in that, they're gonna kind of meld together, or they have with me. It's not like, well, I'm gonna be this person over here in this sex relationship, and I'm gonna be this person in business. The principles are the same, you know? And my sex relations are more brotherly, and my brother relationships have more to do with intimacy. The people that I do business with today, you know, we are close for the most part.
So,
Yes. Yes, I mean, that's just my own personal experience. Nothing's ever come, you know, even at work where you're given a position of leadership, um, that's not a position that I've given myself power in. If I have any power, it was given to me from someone else.
And still it's power to help.
Yeah. Yeah, and leadership means I go first. Doesn't mean I'm pushing you over the cliff. Okay, is that a good place to
Okay, I'll
stop?
talk about which paragraph.